Good morning. I'm going to call this session of the Board of Revision to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. With me, farthest to my left is Lynn Nesbitt, right to my left is Marla Billinghurst, and my name is Harvey Diamond. The City Assessment Department is represented by Marina Tenowara, and our secretary is Carrie Walshaw. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rules in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision have been requested are described in each application. We will limit discussion to those matters. The statement that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing must be sworn testimony. Anyone speaking must be sworn in. Be advised, comparative assessments of properties are not considered as evidence by our board. Our board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it and the city administration. We make our decisions on the basis of the evidence that we hear, and will issue written orders that will mail to each party as soon as possible after the hearing today. Please note that our decisions with respect to application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to an application for exemption from taxation. And should a party wish to appeal, information to do so will be included with our order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions, then the applicant may provide their evidence followed by questions. And after all the evidence is through, we'll give an opportunity to summarize it if any party wishes to do so. Once the evidence on an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave, the person will repeat for each item on the agenda today, and the session will end after all applications have been heard. We will deliberate in private, and we will issue a written order, which will be sent by registered mail as soon as possible. All information at all public hearings are live streamed and recorded and will be formed part of a public record. These for the parties in, Carol?
Please state your name.
Morina Gantika Tenora.
Do you affirm the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Do you swear in or affirm?
I'll swear.
Please state your name.
Diane Shinoman.
Do you swear the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Justin Zarnowski.
Do you swear the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Alexander Ekman.
And do you swear the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
The first matter we're hearing today is 1660 Kingston Boulevard, and you can proceed when you're ready to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Property roll number 1000644850. Property address 1660 Keniston Boulevard. Property owner 3346218 Manitoba Limited. This property originally valued as $26,637,000. Today I'm making a recommendation. My recommendation is attached in the last page of my brief. My presentation is focusing on the recommendation because our original value, I'm asking to reduce the original value. Then I don't talk that much about how we calculate the original value. So the second page in my briefs, lease information attached in second page. And my third page, property comparables attached in my third page, sorry. And those are close proximity and similar type of businesses and very basic similar comparables. If I move to my agenda pages, pictures, I would like to explain where the property is. It is in the corner of McWillery and Keniston Boulevard. You can see the pictures. In next page, it's Google pictures in the other two pages, page number 2 and 3 in my agenda pages. So very briefly, I'm moving to income expenses mirror. This property is fully occupied at that time, at the reference date and the reference period, and 13 tenants are there. Then I'm moving to income statement of the property. Sorry, I did not page number those pages.
Yeah.
That's, so this property has a rental revenue reported 1,990,000 and 196 and 16 cents. I did a recalculation giving this the reported income using our 4% vacancy allowance. Giving a 4% vacancy allowance, I recalculated what should be the net operating income will be this property using all the reported income. So my net operating income after I'm giving a 4% market vacancy of 79,607 and 65 cents, my net operating income calculated to 1,870,467. This is actually recalculated, not the net operating income, because I adjusted the reported net operating income using the 4% vacancy. And also I did remove the leasing commission from expenses based on the case law we use in the assessment purpose. So my reconstructed net operating income using all the reported numbers will be 1,870,460. So if I compare that number to what is my recommended net operating income using model value in my, I'm very close to the net operating income as we reported and what we use the model. Our model net income operating income will be 1,809,336. I'm using these numbers, adding these numbers, net operating income in Norwood Shopping Center, net operating income in gas kiosk and vehicle service.
So all three combined?
Oh, all three combined, model driven, yeah, sorry, if I'm so fast. All three combined, our model driven net operating income will be 1,809,336. And I use the model parameters, which is 2% other income and vacancy shortfall of $8 in neighborhood shopping center. And gas pump, we use 2% other non-recoverable expenses and $6 per square feet shortfall. And car wash, we use 2% other non-recoverable expenses and $4.50 shortfall allowance, vacancy shortfall allowance. And corporate is for entire property is 7.15. Then our model-driven non-recoverable allowance, total allowance is $64,089, which is 3% of 3.42% non-recoverable expenses we use to calculate this, my recommended valuation. I use non-recoverable expenses as a 2% and the vacancy shortfall together to calculate. Those are all the numbers.
Okay.
So if I compare that number to reported non-recoverable allowance, reported non-recoverable amount is $58,976 without leasing commission. Based on the assessment purpose, based on case law, we don't use the leasing commission as a non-recoverable allowance. So, which is 3% of non-recoverable expenses were reported, and we are using 3% approximately non-recoverable expenses. And based on those evidence, and based on all the reported net operating income, reconstructed net operating income, my recommendation to reduce the value to this property, 25,651,000, as written in this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Do you have any questions of the assessor?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
When you valued the gas bar, did you consider the actual lease rent on the gas bar?
Gas bar, as I remember, it's a land lease. We use a model driven amount for the gas bar. And the additional building value, which is additional building count as the shelter, or all the underground pumps and everything.
And do you have any comparables for the gas bar?
No,
You have no comparables?
no, I did not attach any comparables because most of the gas bars are land leases.
And if the current lease on the gas bar was negotiated in 2015, would you not consider that?
But it is a land lease.
It's still a gas bar lease.
Yeah, but it is considered it is model driven, but I did not focus on individually on that lease.
So when you say model driven, how does the model derive that rent?
Based on all the data we input in the model
So-
for the
so
gas
that-
bars.
So that data would be comparables
Yes,
presumably?
yes, but I don't put any particular comparables put in my brief, that's why I don't have
So,
it.
so you're relying on comparables, but you didn't include any of them?
In my brief, as I did not enter anything as evidence.
Okay, but you are relying, like.
Oh, yeah.
Could you
It's-
explain why you didn't include any comparables then?
Because if I include the gas bar comparables, because it should be the land leases, but we don't usually put the land leases as a comparable. That's the only reason I did not put.
So if land lease comparables aren't used, what comparables is the model using?
I'm not doing a model, I cannot exactly answer how we design the model for the gas bar, but the purpose, I did not include any gas bar comparables in my enter as evidence because those are land leases.
So you don't have any comparables, but the model does? I'm not understanding.
Okay, if I explain, we do the mass appraisal, but these all the numbers given by the mass appraisers. I personally don't do modeling work, then I don't know 100% exactly to answer how we design the gas bar model. But once I enter the comparables as evidence, I need to know about the evidence based on the square footage. But this is a gas bar rent, we calculated based on the square footage. But I cannot do that because it's a land lease. That's why I did not enter any gas bar evidence into my briefs because I did not find it. That does not mean department won't. That I cannot. At that time, I did not find it. I did not bother about that. That's the only reason.
Okay, so just to clarify, so you couldn't find any comparables because they're land leases, but the model does?
If even again I'm speaking, once I make my brief, I did not bother finding leases because in general in my knowledge, gas bar leases mostly land leases. But in my knowledge, I don't include any land leases as a comparable. That's the reason I did not put anything as evidence. But it does not mean no one consider the comparables to design the mass appraisal model, but I don't work in the mass appraisal design. That's the reason I did not enter as evidence. It's totally my decision, what I put as a comparables, what I put as a defend the property, but I did not choose to put any land comparables there.
But is the model not mass appraisal? You said you
It's a
used the model.
yeah,
Yes.
model is a mass appraisal, but I don't personally work with the designing models, then I don't know how exactly explain how we design the mass appraisal model.
But you used the model.
I use the model. All of the assessors use the mass appraisal model. But the finding comparables, putting comparables into briefs is totally our choice.
And so your choice was just to rely on the model that?
Okay, I think we've got
Yeah.
that, okay, and if you have contrary evidence, we'll certainly listen to that then, but I think you should be beating this to death at this point. I think we get the fact that there's no comparisons here.
Fair enough,
So if that's what you want us to do, I think you've done that.
fair
Okay.
enough.
On your shortfall, you took on your expenses, including management, you took the total of that, plus you added the shortfall, and the vacancy, or can you explain that one more time?
Okay, we consider non-recoverable expenses mean anything cannot recover by the tenant. The owner cannot recover, any expenses cannot recover by the tenant, it's a non-recoverable expenses. Then vacancy shortfall also we given for the, cover the cost of non-recoverable. Then we consider non-recoverable allowance is the managed, other expenses. Now we use the different terminology for this cycle because it used to be management 5% and other 2%, but this cycle we remove that management 5%, we use the expenses, common terminology. It includes the management expenses 2% and the shortfall of $8 per square feet. Altogether, we consider as the non-recoverable expense amount.
Okay.
So historically, you did 2% and 5%?
Yes,
And now
that's
you're doing
historical.
2%?
We historically did that 5% for management, 2% as other expenses, and vacancy shortfall. But this cycle, we particularly remove the 5% of management based on all the research we have done, all the data, and we decided management expenses always recovered by the tenant. We, as department, decided to remove the management 5%. This cycle, we consider non-recoverable expenses as 2% plus shortfall allowance. But historically, always we consider as the non-recoverable expenses as a shortfall, 5% management and 2% other. In this cycle, shortfall plus 2%.
Okay, I understand. So you said that the expenses added up to 3%, and that.
Yes,
it-
I honestly, what I did.
Yes, I understand.
I understand, okay.
So then you said that adds up to how much the shortfall was in our 2017 financial statement.
If I add my shortfall, it will be 64,089 Just my shortfall means the shortfall in the model-driven recommendation. And what I did was, I get the differences between recoverable expenses and recoveries,
Yes.
and I add the general administrative and other non-recoverables to find the what was the non-recoverable, sorry,
Right. Yeah, I
what was the
understand.
non-recoverable. Then my number came, the reported number came to as my review 58,976, which is not including leasing commission. For the assessment purpose, based on the case law, we don't use the leasing commission as the non-recoverable expense.
Right, I understand that. So, but that non-recoverable portion you're referring to in the 2017 statement that
Yes.
we provided, that doesn't allow for any vacancy. This particular statement had no vacancy.
I
So-
was, sorry,
shortfall on vacancy. So if in fact there was some vacancy, would you agree that there would be more non-recoverable?
I agree, and also.
So you've not really allowed for any
my-
non-recoverable on the vacancy that you've allowed. You've allowed 4% vacancy, but you haven't really allowed any shortfall on the vacancy. Because that shortfall of 3% adds up to the actual shortfall that we always have at this property.
Yes, but my basic proposal for basic point of view for this reported income, because we use the reported income as it is. To be fair, because it reported as a net operating income, net earning as a 1,912,370. To be fair, when I calculated, I was given 4% of market vacancy, to be
Correct.
fair. Then my non-recoverable expenses recalculated to be 1,870,460. That's all I compare. That's I call compared to reconstructed net operating income to model-driven net operating income. Then based on that one, I'm relying in this model, and I see it is fair market value, then I'm proposing the 25 million.
And so for this cycle, what you're saying is that effectively the rent that you're talking about is inclusive of that, takes into account the management. That's why, so that's where you're dealing with it, right?
I did not get the answer.
Well, so you've got a note on page 5 that says the estimated potential rent is net of all expenses to the owner, including the cost of management.
Yeah,
So I'm taking that to mean the reason why you're not giving that 5% management is because you're now factoring that into rent.
yes, but because this cycle we identified management expenses always recovered from tenants, then we remove the 5% management. That's why it's including management, yes.
And so when you use in your recommendation, you're using our actual rent that we're collecting.
No. We use the rent, almost our actual rents. But I recalculated this one to show our net operating income very close to what is reported. That I did not do anything in here particularly, because I recalculated to show it is model driven net operating income, and reported net operating income is closer. That's all my point.
Fair enough. So the actual net of that 3% non-recoverable happens to be similar to your
Yes,
model-driven,
yes.
your proposal, which
Yes.
though.
If
doesn't-
coincidentally it's closer, then I'm telling, my proposal is this property is 3% is fair enough, because we all within the 3%. That's just the evidence only, because I'm not doing anything different than we do always, but this is only for the presentation purpose. I'm showing we are in the same range. We are giving 3%. Actually, this property has 3% of non-recoverable. That's all. This
With
is
3% non-recoverable with no vacancy. Right? Like the reported income is 3% non-recoverable with 0% vacancy.
yes.
And your model is it would have a 3% shortfall with 4% vacancy.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to your net operating income, you're saying that the numbers you used were very similar to what we reported.
Yes.
But what we reported included full rent for the gas bar.
Yes.
But you're taking that full rent for the gas bar, plus you're adding a value of $346,000 for the additional building value.
Yeah. If I explain this one correctly, you can go and see page number 4. Page number 4, we have a one income stream for Neighborhood Shopping Center. It is an error it's an oversight error we make at that time. Put all the gas kiosks and vehicle car wash together in that income stream, because we don't keep that one income stream for the gas stations, gas kiosks, because of the land lease, and also it has a gas bar, gas tank, underground gas tanks, and all accessible properties. Then we prefer to keep it separate as an additional building value for the gas bar. That's why we separated it. That's why we don't use the actual. That's why I have to recreate the two income stream and make a recommendation for this property, because the original assessment, if I don't know how it happened, I don't know why it happened, it's the oversight error in there.
Okay, I think that's all.
Thank you. Ms. Nisbet, any questions for the assessor?
You just glossed over the cap rate. Could you explain how you came up with a 7.15 cap rate, please?
If I say it correctly, this is the model-driven cap rate for this Keniston area. I did
Just
not
for the
override.
Keniston area?
Because of so many factors enter to the mass appraisal model to find out which would be the cap rate. This is the model-driven cap rate for this area, and based on the age, based on the location, based on the year of build, and so many factors.
So that cap rate isn't used for other areas? Do other areas have specific cap rates for that area?
This 7.15 is more commonly used for many other areas,
Okay,
but it's based on that individual.
okay. Okay, I was trying to follow along with your numbers.
Okay.
It would have been nice if you had a summary page with all three totaled.
Yes,
Because it was
yes, I
difficult to flip, right?
I totally agree.
Okay, that's just
Honestly, I totally agree.
Yeah, that's just a comment, nothing,
Yeah.
nothing against your numbers, it just meant a lot of flipping back and forth.
No,
Okay,
I agree.
I don't have any questions, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Billinghurst?
Just back to the cap rate, so you use those 7.15, which I'm noticing on your table for retail regional. So that is outside of the 80th percentile, so
Retail regional. Yeah, this is a neighborhood shopping center. This is not a retail regional, but retail regional mainly we go to the bigger shopping malls. This is neighborhood shopping center, 7.15, 20th percentile.
oh, okay, okay. It was C4, so I thought it was a regional. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I don't have any questions because they've all been asked, so thank you. So you can go ahead with your evidence now.
I have some rebuttal as well.
Sorry?
I have some rebuttal, but actually, okay, can I do some rebuttal? Thank you.
You can proceed when you're ready.
With the rebuttal?
Or do you want to do the rebuttal first? That's fine if you do.
Sure.
Go ahead.
This is just, once again, on the gas bar. If we take the gas bar rent and we cap it at 7.25 using management fee of 5% and other of 2% and shortfall of $10, we arrive at a value of $1,438,000. On the next page, if we do the same rent using the city parameters that the assessors used, we arrive at a value of $1,537,000. If we add up the gas bar valuation that the assessor used It's the 1,640,000 plus 391, we get 2,031,000. So using the 2015 lease on this gas bar, we get 1,537,000 using these assessor parameters, but yet it's being valued at 2 million in the assessor rate.
And the reason the 2015 lease is so important is because, while it might have been a land lease at the start, what happens with these types of buildings is that the landlord actually owns them at the end, right? So to say that's not the value because they're the owners of the building isn't true on these renewals. So what happens is when they're negotiating the renewal rent with us, it really isn't a land lease anymore. Now they're, rebuying the convenience store and the pumps, and so that rent is actually a lot more indicative of market value than it would be on a pure land lease at the front end. So it is valuable to consider that 2015.
Okay, I'm just looking at the city's reworking though, and they show a valuation of the gas bar at 1,537,000. You're showing it at 1,640,000. Or the city's showing it at 1,640,000.
You have
You're
to
showing-
add them all together.
I'm just talking about the gas bar itself right now.
Okay.
So you've got the gas bar value, that if you look at page 2 of your rebuttal, 1,537,000 using the city's parameters.
Yes, that's
And the city
based
had,
on-
and the city had it 1,640,000, so they're about $100,000 more.
No,
than
this
yours.
is for the whole, this is the gas bar, the C-store, and the car wash, mine, petroleum, I just call it petroleum.
Oh, so,
That's the total of the rental income capped at 7.15. Is
So-
1,537,000. The total of theirs is 1,640,000 plus 391 equals 2,031,000.
okay, so you have the 391 here as well. Okay, I want to make that clear.
Correct,
Okay.
it's the total. This is the total
I see.
rent we get on the gas
Oh,
bar.
I see, okay, I see the bottom, yes, you have 1,640 plus 391. I didn't look that far.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, okay.
okay, and is anything else in the rebuttal? Because
Yes, I want
okay.
a couple more things. With respect to the comments about the rent being gross, or including management fee or other non-recoverable, Sobeys is a good example of where that is not the case. Sobeys does not pay certain expenses. They don't pay roof repairs, they don't pay all of the HVAC repairs. The landlord has to pay for the major HVAC repairs and for the roof structure and all structural to do with the shopping center. We actually have to do the roof on the Sobeys coming up, but we're not gonna get any rent or any recovery from doing that roof. As far as management fee, the Sobeys does not allow for a full recovery of the 5% management fee, which is industry standard. The Sobeys only pays 15% on common area costs that they pay. So they pay an administration fee, it's not even a management fee. So Sobeys is an example of where we do not recover almost all of the management fee, and we do not recover all the operating costs. So the 2% we are now allowed is just not covering, making it a net lease to the landlord.
And the reason we're illustrating Sobeys is, they're half the shopping center, so without going line by line through the smaller leases, the Sobeys is a good example of what national tenants negotiate in terms of, these commercial leases. And is specifically in rebuttal to the idea that the rent that we get is inclusive of the full recovery for management fees, because it just isn't.
Okay, that's your rebuttal?
Yes.
Questions on the rebuttal?
Yes,
Go
thank you, Mr. Chairman. My first question, is this a petroleum, is a land lease? Is it a land lease?
It was a land lease.
It was a land lease. And who spent the money to build the petroleum, all the kiosks and everything?
20 years ago,
It would have
it
been
would have been
Imperial Oil.
Imperial Oil.
Okay. And also, your calculation, you did not include any of the underground tanks and shelters?
I did an income approach on the income that we earn.
Okay, but you're saying the square footage, this square footage is the land square footage or the building square footage?
This is the building square footage.
Okay, then
It's because there's really no real number. This is the square footage.
this is the, okay, that's the assumably building square footage, but not including any of the,
Well, there is no square footage for the tanks, I don't know how big they are, they're underground.
yes. Those underground, but.
There are tanks now though.
Yes, but do you know about the for assessment purpose, we use those underground tanks and the pumps and everything as the additional building value?
And when we do a renewal with the tenant where we own those improvements, we also factor that into that total rent that's being calculated. So we're not renting it just on the basis of above ground C-store, right? Where if they come to us and they say, we wanna pay X amount of rent, we're thinking, well, as landlord, now we own those tanks, we own those pumps, we own the car wash, we own the C-store, this is the rent that you're paying. The fact that it's expressed on a per square foot basis doesn't mean that we didn't factor in all of the improvements.
Yeah, my presentation solely based on the assessment purpose, yeah. So we do have, do you know about, in here it's only one component as Imperial, but we use as a 2-component vehicle service garage and the gas bar. Do you understand that?
Yeah, and that's why we're
Yeah.
entering into this, we understand it as differently, like it's one component and.
It's one tenant.
Yes.
One tenant, one
I
rent,
understand.
and one value
That's all
that,
my question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the applicant on the rebuttal? Okay, you indicated that you don't recover all of the expenses, for example, roof and repairs, but these are structural, and they're never included as something that's recoverable.
so there's a portion of the roof that is structural, you're
Yeah.
talking roof deck, what actually holds up the building, but what we're talking about flashing,
When they
roof
have
membrane.
anytime they have a leak, anything like that, the Sobeys is different, it's,
So all aspects of the roof aren't structural, right? So the flashing doesn't actually hold up the building. So if we're repairing that.
Well, I'm not sure, because if the roof's leaking, then it's not doing its job, so I think it goes to structure, because you're entitled to a roof that doesn't leak.
So the typical commercial lease where you're talking fully net, the tenant would pay as operating costs, the cost of a roof membrane repair or flashing, or all of the components other than literally the steel structure would be structural.
So you're saying that your lease, with regard to Sobeys, has different wording in it insofar as what the tenant's required to do than your other leases for the tenants?
Absolutely.
And other tenants would have to pay for
yes.
general maintenance, et cetera, that doesn't go all the way to replacing the roof or doing major repairs to it?
Or even like our typical standard net lease would include the tenant paying for replacements of flashing, replacements to the membrane, any roof replacements outside of that, the literal steel structure of it.
Okay, but your statement, your opening statement did show your expenses, so you said these are potential problems, so they obviously didn't impact this year that we're dealing with right now, because
That would be
you
the
still
one.
should have higher net, NOI than the cities did.
Well, so the non-recoverable expenses we have in our income statement do include that.
Right.
But where we haven't done a significant roof replacement, roof repair, it won't be, magnified like it would when we actually, in the next couple of years,
Sure,
we have to.
potentially that'll happen, obviously.
I mean, it will eventually happen, right?
Okay. Thank you. Okay, you can proceed with your main evidence now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Page 1. This property was one of the first developments at Keniston McGilvery. It's actually a metal building, it's not concrete block, it's a metal building. The bays are about 90 feet deep, which is unusual. It's standard retail bay would be about 65 feet, and so this is much longer, or much deeper, so when we lease to a tenant, depending on the size of their space, they would have very small frontage because they have to go 90 feet back. So in order to lease to some of the smaller tenants, they would get very small frontage, so that that has an effect on the rent that we can charge because they don't get as long frontage because the bay is so deep. The property is, like I said, about 20 years old, and we are starting to see more significant repairs needed at the property, and including, like we just talked about, the roof at Sobeys needs to be repaired. At this site, we have a recurring issue with land drainage. The city's ditches along Keniston are not efficient, and during the spring thaw and freeze cycle, it causes a backup freeze up to the property's land drainage system. The sewer line along McGilvery that ties into the main sewer line that runs along the extreme west side of the property at the rear of the Boston Pizza and the CRU and the Sobeys backs up frequently due to the city's line being overwhelmed and clogged. This has resulted in a need to flush our lines on a semi-annual basis or risk a serious backup incident. Claims to the cost of this have been filed with the city repeatedly, and they have never responded or paid for any of this. This property, the tenant sales, for 5 of the 6 tenants that have sales reporting clauses are down. That's including Boston Pizza, Tiber River, IDC Communications, New Burger, and Pet Value. The sales are down between 5 and 20% for the year prior to the reference date. In 2018, we did a 15-1 agreement with the city, and the value at that time was $22,974,000. This is on page 2. 2 years later, the 2020 assessment was increased to $26,637,000. That's 16% in 2 years. That's a pretty big return in 2 years on a property that's 2 years older, with a Sobeys that has a lease of only 3 years left at the date of the reference term. So we've lost the Starbucks. So in 2 years, the city has increased the value by 16%, but yet nothing good has happened to the shopping center. It's 2 years older. Sobeys is going to expire in 3 years. And actually, I think I have, it's like 50% of the leases or something like that are expiring in 3 years. So nothing good has happened to the shopping center, yet the value's gone up 16%. So I'm not quite sure how that can be. If we go to page 3, we get to our income approach to valuation. We've used the actual rents for a total of $1,962,866. We've used the 4% vacancy in accordance with the assessment department. We've used a shortfall of $10. As I said, with a 20-year-old shopping center, maintenance costs are much higher. And the $8 just doesn't cover the shortfall, especially when I believe the taxes are about $6.50. So when the taxes are $6.50 a square foot, that being a big component of the shortfall, $8 doesn't cover, so we've used $10. It's much higher than $10, I'll get to that after. We have included 5% of management and non-recoverable. As I mentioned in the rebuttal, Sobeys is an example of where we do not recover almost any management fees. We've used a cap rate of 7.25, and we come to a market value of $23,703,000 rounded. I will explain those numbers after. I have some comparables, but we've used, I guess, almost similar rent as the recommendation. We could go through the comparables, but I don't know that we need to do that. If anybody has any questions on the comparables, I'm happy to respond. Actual rents used in this valuation are equal to or greater than the comparables, and they would represent market for this reference date. The vacancy, like I said, is very similar is the same value used by the city. 4% is fair. We're noticing much higher vacancy coming around the area with the opening of Seasons of Tuxedo and the outlet mall. And so at the 4% probably is fair at this point, but it won't be going forward. Again, I mentioned the shortfall already. The non-recoverable analysis, the assessor has unilaterally removed the 5% allowance, which was previously labeled as management. This is being treated by both taxpayers and the assessor as an accounting for non-recoverable expenses. The reality of administering commercial leases is that even triple net leases will almost always contain provisions which limit the recovery of certain costs from tenants. As such, a proper analysis of the value of the property includes a deduction from the net income of that property to account for these expenses. Where a property is being valued by applying a capitalization rate, its net to its net income, eliminating appropriate deductions such as non-recoverable expenses artificially inflates the value of the property. The assessor's role is not to maximize the assessed value of the properties, but rather to provide good faith estimate of the market value. In the event a property was brought to market, a purchaser would properly deduct the value of non-recoverable expenses from the revenue so as to arrive at the actual net income a property is likely to produce. By excluding this deduction, the assessor is no longer estimating the market value. The assessor is instead estimating the market value as if there are no non-recoverable expenses. This extraordinary assumption would be similar to assessing on the basis of rent that is above market or as if the building was larger than it is. With respect to the subject properties, Sobeys lease does not allow for full recovery of some maintenance items, as we mentioned before. Financial information provided to the assessment department each year reflects these shortfalls for non-recoverable management fees and maintenance items. These shortfalls, as reported to the assessment department, were as follows for the last 3 years before the reference date. In 2015, they were 5%, in 2016, 5%, and in 2017, 4%. Clearly, this shows the stabilized deduction of 5%, which is reflected in the income approach. Capitalization rate is a reflection of the risk in a particular property. The risks inherent in this property include 55% of the tenant's leases will be expiring within 3 years from the reference date. This includes the anchor tenant, Sobeys, which carries even more risk with the consolidation of Sobeys and Safeway. A newer Safeway store is located directly across the street from the subject property and is a concern as Sobeys has not made any investment for upgrades to the subject Sobeys, and this may indicate a desire to terminate the lease at the end of the lease term. This presents a huge risk and would present a huge risk to any landlord. Further risk on the grocery store includes the desire for online shopping and delivery convenience, which Sobeys has not offered like Save-On and Superstore have done. Shoppers will migrate to brands that offer the most convenience. So if they want delivery, then they're going to go to Save-On and they're going to go to Superstore and even Walmart. So that's not boding very well for Sobeys at this point. The MLCC opened a new large store at the Seasons Outlet Mall, which is the same market as the Keniston Crossing store and the subject. This is a cause for concern as they may eventually find that there is value in closing the Keniston store should sales decline as a result of the second store at the outlet. This is the second largest space at the subject property, presents a risk. With the flood of new retail space in the Seasons and Outlet Mall, the draw for tenants is going that direction. In fact, vacancy in the older spaces is increasing and staying vacant longer. This presents another risk for the subject property. Given the risk with this property, the capitalization rate should be 7.25. We respectively submit that the market value of the property at April 1, 2018 was $23,703,000. The next page, page 8, is the 15-1 agreement that was made with the city 2 years ago. And it says the parties agree that the assessment as now revised reflects April 1, 2016 market value and should be a changed effective January 2018. And that value was $22,974,000 2 years ago. The next number of pages are several articles with respect to Sobeys' financial health. Since they took over the Safeway, it was not a great deal. It didn't work that well for them. There's a number of articles that support the risk involved in Sobeys, and that's what we have. If we go, we can page through, I'm not going to read through all of them. If we go to page 12, we can see some other risks involved with the Sobeys. Part halfway down the page at the bottom of, at the end of the 6th paragraph, it says Walmart Canada is broadening its food offering. Well, we know now that Walmart is offering almost at least the same number of SKUs as Sobeys is offering, so that's another risk on the Sobeys. If we go to the next page, page 13, we know that when Sobeys took over Safeway, a number of people did not gravitate to the Sobeys, and also were leaving Safeway because they were starting to put the Sobeys Compliments brands into Safeway stores. So again, they're losing shoppers there. And this particular person indicated that they are changing to Superstore. Now Sobeys has to win these customers back, and that's really hard to do. The next issue with the Sobeys again is the online ordering and that sort of thing, which Sobeys is not offering, and that is a real risk. If we turn the pages to page 19, again, it says now Costco is even becoming a shopping, or not becoming, it's always been a risk, but it's becoming more of a risk since Sobeys takeover of Safeway. There's endless number of articles that support the struggles that Sobeys has since the Safeway takeover. Page 20. Internet shopping now is the reality, and it's affecting all bricks and mortar retail. This affects Sobeys, this affects many of our tenants at this particular property, Tiber River, Pet Value, IDC, all those things can be ordered online, and that is the way of the future, and that is the way today already. These articles all refer to retailers that have closed because the online shopping is just taking over. Millennials are all shopping online, and they're teaching their parents how to shop online, and that's in this article. Amazon is delivering food now, and many things. Page 22, again, convenience is king. That's what people are looking for now. So they're looking for people that will deliver their groceries, and as a result, people are not going to be visiting bricks and mortar stores as much anymore going forward. All of these things are the risks that we're talking about in this property, and why the cap rate at 7 should be higher than 7.5, which happens to be on the city schedule. It's the lowest cap rate in the 80 to 20 percentile. So that would suggest that this is a premier property. Well, it's not a premier property, so it shouldn't have the lowest cap rate. These articles, educated investors all know about these articles. So no one is going to come in, an investor's not going to come and purchase this property at a low cap rate, knowing all of these risks. And they all know it. They all know these risks. And that's the reality. That's everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions of the applicant?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to ask, I have some rebuttal evidence. Can I enter it now or later?
If you want to deal with it now, you can deal with
Okay,
it now.
then
If you want to deal with it after, you can deal with it after. It's up to you.
Yeah, I would like to enter now. It's easy to ask the questions.
Absolutely, you enter it now, and then go over it, and then I'll ask, no questions to be asked of you on it as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I see from the title, this rebuttal is also going to refer to the next item on the agenda as well.
Yes, but it's a common rebuttal. I only focus on the pages on
Go ahead.
this one. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to ask question based on page number 1 on your main. You talk about all the Boston Pizza, all the businesses are kind of declining their businesses. That means, do you collect the percentage rent from them too?
No.
And then if I move to page number 4, my question, in there, shortfall, you use the $10 per square feet. Is that property has been vacant in the past?
No,
And then adding three numbers, shortfall and management and other, the three numbers altogether will be 165,915. When I use from your effective gross income, it will be 9% from 9% of recoveries. Is that, do you think it's fair?
we use the shortfall that we're allowed based on our allowed vacancy. So no, that's not the exact number because we didn't have that vacancy, but we're allowed that vacancy rate that you used, the 4%, and we're allowed a shortfall on that, just like everybody else is, just like every other property owner is. But they're not necessarily 4% vacant, or, so that 34,000 is part of that, we're allowed to have that.
No, I just asked.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing, you mentioned in page number 4 again, and it's, now if I'll ask that question later. And I'm moving to page number 6 on your page. And also my rebuttal evidence, page number 11. And page number 14 and page number 17. I checked the reported income expenses mailers for 2015, 2016 and 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And I recalculated those bottom pair line portion. I did handwriting on that one. I gave the 4% allowance, and I recalculated to see about what should be the non-recoverable expenses for these properties. My numbers came lower than this one. I assume because of the industry standard, you might use the leasing commission those
Yes.
ones. But I wanted to show for the assessment purpose and assessment point of view, based on the case laws, if we remove the leasing commission, non-recoverables for these properties lower than what we mentioned, what Ms. Schindelman mentioned in this one. Did you agree about using leasing commission to calculate this one?
I did use the leasing commission. I mean, that's a cost that happens frequently in the life of a property.
Okay. And the last question,
But your numbers here are 3% and.
without leasing commission.
Okay, but they're over the 2%.
Yes,
Carry-on.
yes. That's what I want to ask, but, the last question, in page number 7, you talk about the, in next 3 years, and 55% of tenant will be maybe terminate, maybe something will happen. Do you consider those are post-referral information?
No, I'm talking about the risk in the property right now. Right now, I know that their leases are up in 3 years. I know that now. I knew that in 2017 and I knew it in 2001 practically, if they were long leases, that their leases were gonna expire, it's not post-reference. I knew that. We knew that. Everyone knows that.
As of the reference date, that was the term left on those leases, right?
Yeah, as of the reference list, you agree it's fully occupied?
Oh, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, Mr. Chairman, that's all my questions.
So your question, okay, Mrs. Smith, any questions of the applicant?
No,
Ms. Blinders?
No question.
Okay, well, you've alluded to some things for the cap rate insofar as the fact that the building has greater depth and smaller frontage, as you say, that lends to smaller or lower lease fees that you're able to generate on the property. And you indicate it's a metal building, and that means more upkeep, which is something that I guess a potential purchaser would look at. You also indicated that Sobeys is having some difficulty, although that was in the past. I guess you noticed that their latest statements have shown that they've actually turned around and they're doing a lot better now.
Right, but we had two that closed
No, I
already,
understand.
so we're a little scared.
No, I know, but
And-
that's,
and we were
that's
trying-
history though, it's not the latest news.
And we're trying to keep with the,
No, I know,
so
I
we
just
don't
wanted
get
to
the
set-
reference
I just
date
wanna-
argument.
I know, I want to set the record straight though, because right now, potential purchaser's gonna look at the situation as it stands today, not as it was in the past, right?
Well, we're stuck with the economic information as of the reference date though, right?
No, but we're looking at if it was to be purchased today based on we're looking at how it's operating in the last reference date, but it's property as exists today with that valuation. So the prospects today would be what a person would probably do today.
And there's still a Safeway across the street, right?
There is a Safeway across the street, I mean, I do recognize those things, so you're saying. Now, you indicated that a lot of the leases are gonna be expiring in 3 years, and again, that could be a potential advantage to, if rates are accelerating, then there's an option or a chance that the rents could actually be increased in the property rather than diminished.
There's a huge amount of vacancy in our area. I don't know if you've driven by some of the smart centers.
No, I haven't, I just know that you're
We're
fully
expect-
leased, so.
We're fully leased
Yeah.
now, but we're expecting, I mean, there's a lot of vacancy right now.
Okay, so you said there's some danger that, okay, fair. Cap rate, yeah, okay, so I think that your position is that your building is not, your shopping center is not the best, so you're looking for a slightly higher cap rate, and you want to increase from 7.50 to 7.25. Okay, that's my purchase things. Okay, well, determine this, you'll hear from us.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Okay, well, next to 1295 Pembina Highway, and when you're ready, you can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm entering a recommendation for this property.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's okay. Can I have a seat? I think
Okay, we're ready for you to proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Property roll number 0307100700. Property address 1295 Pembina Highway. This property originally valued as $4,660,000. And today I'm making a recommendation to this property to reduce value to $3,912,000. My recommendation mostly based on the rental rate change and the cap rate change a little bit. If I move to page number 2, it has attached the lease information and rent comparables. Lease information reported, the hair salon is $19 per square feet, and Hakim Optical $23 per square feet, and Raxel Pharmacy is $23.35 per square feet. And rent comparables from the Pembina Highway, similar type of operations. So my recommendation today mostly based on using actual rents and overall rented rents for the Raxwell Pharmacy, because Raxwell has 4 units. It's the first one, and the other 3 vacant units also used by Raxwell. then that's why I use the lower grades. Then it's overall blended, it is around $23 per square feet. So, but unfortunately, Raxwell is totally vacant as of today, but it is post reference. We are not giving any vacancy allowance now, but it will be accounted. If it's vacant, can keep vacant for another 2 years or 1 year, it will account for next cycle. But this cycle, we cannot give any vacancy allowance even though it's vacant. It's vacant, it's dark. So I'm applying 4% vacancy plus, it is model driven, and 2% expenses and $8 per square feet shortfall. And capitalization rate, I was increased for 7.8% based on the building age and the area, and because it's a corner of the McGillivray and Pemina and location, I increased the cap rate. Then page number 1 on my agenda pages, picture pages, you will see the location. And next page you will see the pictures of the Google pictures. And also I attached the Shindico brochure page, and it shows they were trying to lease out the pad lease, but there is excess land in there, additional land in there, but I did not account for my valuation because originally we did not account that extra land for valuation. Even I did not include in here. Total additional land area for as my picture, excess land area picture, 21,332 square feet. Big land is additional land, but for this assessment, we do not calculate those ones because we did not account in original. It's just for information only. So income expenses may attach, and for that reference period, no vacancy in that building, it's 0 vacancy reported. And net operating income reported 326,271.53. But I recalculated those ones, giving a 4% market vacancy. My net operating income reconstructed using actuals came out to 312,728, which is in range of our model-driven net operating income. It's higher than model-driven net operating income. Based on those reported income and model-driven income, market value for this property, this property market value will be $3,912,000. That's my recommendation for this project. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Questions of the assessor?
Okay, yes, please. Were you aware, prior to the reference date, that the main tenant, the anchor tenant for 11,119 square feet was planning to leave prior to the reference date?
I do not. I saw some information in your brief, but at that reference date, they are there. Tenant is there.
They are there, yes.
Yeah.
Were you aware that we had repeatedly told the assessment department that that tenant was leaving?
I don't know.
Okay.
And so your evaluation is not taking into account the fact that they're leaving?
No, because as of the reference date, fully occupied, I know as of today it is vacant. It will account for next cycle. When its next cycle comes, if it's vacant, we are 100% certain we are giving them vacancy allowance, but we cannot do that as of this cycle because it's occupied.
So-
If,
The reference date, yeah.
but would you agree that in the market, if an investor knew today that tomorrow or in a year that tenant was leaving, would that affect the value to that investor?
Assessment purpose, for the assessment point of view.
Market value?
We cannot consider because we have a guidelines, case law and municipal board orders, because we don't consider any future, because that's why we put we cannot allow post reference. Those are post reference. We, unfortunately, for the assessment purpose, for assessment department, we don't consider any post reference.
Right, but the information about it is not post-reference. It was known before April 1, 2018.
I understand, as an investor, it could be, they could be, but for an assessor, I won't be.
So the market value you're considering isn't willing purchaser, willing seller, it's what?
It is a market value as investment purpose. I know Shindico is the leading investment group, but I don't have any argument with the leading investment group with how to invest, how to do those things. I'm giving a presentation as of today as an assessor, as the assessment department prospects and point of view.
Even though there is no excess land in this, and it shouldn't be an issue, I'm going to question you a little bit on that, even though it's not valued in this property. Do you know the zoning parking requirements for a building of this size?
No, but only information I provided. That's why I did not enter any information for my valuation, because I did not do any study. I only studied on this one and this one.
Because that a
it's
front brochure,
yeah,
or was that
yeah.
brochure printed before the reference date, or?
I printed from the system. If I tell you the truth, because this is identified as a investor try to market as a pad lease, but we don't consider this one for our assessment purpose. But that's why I did not consider any number in my market valuation. But it is the data. That's why I put in as evidence.
Why did you put it as evidence?
Because there is a investor trying to find the tenant or investor to lease that area. That means that there is additional land.
So the potential future pad site an investor would consider, but the potential future vacancy they wouldn't.
But this is not this is right now, it's not the future.
There's
As
no
of
value down
today,
for it, so I don't know why we're.
But I just don't know why it was included.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
all.
I guess they're trying to show us how nice they are not including that,
Yeah,
but,
well,
okay.
okay, all right, that's fine, I won't go any more on that. I just have one more question, actually.
Yeah.
The shortfall, again, is at 2%, and I have two more questions. But in this particular case, if we look at our 2017 financial statement, you'll see that there are no leasing costs. And if I calculate the shortfall here, or the non-recoverable, it is 4%.
yes, yeah.
Okay, but you used 2.
No, we don't use 2. Actually, our number is actually 3.94, because we use as always non-recoverable is vacancy shortfall plus vacancy 2%. That means altogether these two numbers add to 12,519 divided by my effective gross income. My calculation is 3.94.
Would you agree on the 2017 statement that if we had vacancy in this particular year, the shortfall would be more, the
Yes.
non-recoverable would be higher, would it
Yes,
not? Okay,
totally,
so-
it won't happen.
So when you have vacancy, your shortfall should also be higher, because if you're saying that your 3.9 is the same as the 4% I calculate on the 2000, it's not, because yours includes the vacancy. This one does not have the vacancy included.
I totally understand,
Okay.
with the same thing we discussed the previous property.
Wait, hold on. I mean, we talked about it's the future.
Okay, that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Has this been any questions to the assessor?
I have no questions, thanks.
Ms. Billingers?
No questions?
Okay, so basically, I'm looking at your recalculation, and you bumped the cap rate from 7.3 to 7.8.
Yes.
And how did you arrive at that as being a fair cap rate?
It is a model driven.
Okay.
And also, this property, built in 1959, originally.
Right.
Then it has some renovation because it was used to be keg restaurant, and it's a farmer, Raxel
Right.
came in, and those things happened. Then effective year, we use 1974. This is, and the location, that's the location, and effective year, because our original
Right?
one, you can see it's a 1990 effective age year. Yeah?
We have the wrong effective age, so the only reason why you
Yeah,
adjust the cap
then-
rate was because of age.
Yes, effective age changed to the, actually, I checked all the photos submitted, previous
Okay.
hearings.
Because I thought you might have changed
Yes,
it because
yes.
knowing that there was a potential
Yeah.
vacancy coming up,
No.
an
It's
investor might see more risk in it and demand
No,
a
I
higher cap
don't do
rate.
that one, no, I
No?
base on the
So for
effective
that
year
reason-
and the location and those ones, yeah.
Okay, so it wasn't to compensate for the risk of losing a tenant.
No,
Okay.
it was for the effective age for the building.
Okay, thank you. Your evidence.
Okay, thank you. Okay, page one. As Marina mentioned, this is a 60-year-old grocery store. It was a Loblaws, and it was renovated to a makeshift strip mall 35 years ago. It was renovated. These units are even deeper. They're 106 feet deep with very narrow frontage. And we talked already about the regular normal bay depth being about 65 feet. Portion of the building has a second and third floor. That was never ever used since it's been renovated and since, in 35 years. It was used for Loblaws. They used the second and third floor, but that was a long time ago. The second and third floor do not have separate access, and they're not, there's no fire separation, and they can't be leased separately. So there is really no value to the second and third floor. There's no rear loading at the property because it's right up against the property line. The loading is actually on the north side of the building by the main Rexall space. So that prohibits us demising the Rexall space into smaller units in order to try to lease it, because we can't change the loading, and we would have to lose a bunch of space to make a corridor to the loading door. So that's a difficult situation. The assessment in 2018 was $3,787,000, and 2 years later, it was increased. Well, this was 23%, but I guess it's based on the recommendation, it's something less. The anchor tenant, we knew in 2015 that they were struggling, and we had been working with them for 3 years to try to sublet their space, to no avail. Page 2, the income market valuation. Basically, the rents aren't too different, $309,000. We've used vacancy of 5%. Shortfall of 8 is similar to the assessment department, and the non-recoverable of 5% and other of 2%. And we've used a cap rate of 10% for the risks, which I'll go over later. The market rents comparables are, like I said, probably lower than the rents I've used in or are lower than the rents I've used in the workup, but we don't need to go through that at this point because we're almost done with the same rents as the assessment department. In the Johnson report for vacancy allowance, We've seen, they're in the 5% range. In 2017, Fort Garry was 5.1%. 82% of this property went dark in 2018 after trying to sublease it for several years. We've used the conservative rate of 5% and we'll deal with the dark property through the capitalization rate. We've used an $8 shortfall, which is similar to the assessment department. The non-recoverable allowance again is, like we said before, it covers all those things that are not covered off in the leases. And we've calculated that the last 3 years were 4%, 4%, and 6% for this property. And there were no leasing commissions included in those. The capitalization rate on page 5, the risks inherent in this non-convert old renovation are greater with the D phase, making it difficult to lease, mothballed and unleasable space on the second and third floors, and the anchor tenant dark. This tenant, as well as the landlord, have been trying to sublease the space for several years. The space was shown to MLCC prior to the reference date and to Dollarama. However, both tenants indicated that the space configuration was not appropriate and the second and third floor space was of no value. If we page through to the appendix on page 6, or I guess it's the very next page, we have email evidence in March 2018 of us showing this to the MLCC prior to the reference date. On page 7, March 2016, we have Rexall saying that is the landlord able to offer any relief? This store will not last. I'm actively looking to sublet. That was in March 2016. In December 2015, again, or prior to the other email, Rexall was already in 2015 asking for rent reduction, possibly cutting down the space just to a dispensary. And he was going to, this gentleman was going to find out if rent reduction would help in this particular case. None of that came to fruition, and they terminated the lease before the end of the lease term. And the property was dark just around the reference date.
And really, we're the agreeable types. The assessor's right. I mean, if you don't think that the tenant's leaving this property, a 7.8 cap rate, sure, it makes sense. But that's not the reality of the property, right? As of the reference date, we knew they were leaving, we knew the space would be difficult, and so that's why we applied that premium of the 2.2% over what the assessor's saying to this property, because if you were buying it, you'd have to factor that in.
It's 82% of the property is dark.
And we're good at marketing space, and we haven't been able to find anyone for it. That's why we're saying, this is a really unique property, and where that difference in cap rate is we're saying, yeah, you have to take into account the fact that Rexall is leaving, has now left, physically now they're gone, and that's the difference between that 7.8 and 10%, is just actually factoring that in.
Okay. Anything else?
I'm not gonna page through my evidence on other things that affect the cap rate, not just the fact that that tenant is dark and gone now. But the, again, online is affecting all of this and our abilities to release and vacancies, especially large vacancies, are staying vacant so much longer now for these reasons. Pharmacy items is, which is one of the reasons, a main reason why Rexall went dark is pharmacy items are things that people are buying online. You can buy all of this stuff online.
You don't need to try on your pills before you buy them, right?
There's actually on page 15, it talks about, there's an example of someone who was ordering online batteries, paper towels, and toilet paper from Amazon. Well, that's everything you would buy at Rexall, and they're ordering it from Amazon, and that's the way of today. Page 18, 19, and 20, and 21, 22, 23 showed that the second and third floors are not leasable. They're just, they're just nothing. They would, like I said, they haven't been used in 35 years, the second and third floors, so just, that's what that is, and that's everything.
Thank
That's
you.
everything. Thank you.
Questions of the
Thank you,
applicant?
Mr. Chairman. Couple of questions, simple questions. Your presentation, you mentioned about the second and third floor. I saw the pictures, I saw previous cycles also pictures. But you recognize as the $5 rent for those areas, spaces, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
because we were told
yeah.
by the assessment department, we had to.
Yeah, and you and me are actually in the same page for the rental rates.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cap rate, do you have any evidence to show about this type of risk associated with, it should be the 10% cap rate?
It's a premium because 82% of the property is going to be vacant from at the reference date, and we knew it, and everybody knew it.
Okay, that means in order to using a vacancy allowance, you decided to use the cap rate?
Right,
adjustment?
because it wasn't vacant, but it is something that an investor or anybody in the market would look at. It's a cap rate issue.
Right, because the capitalization rate is the risk, right? Like that's you're building in your risk tolerance in terms of valuation. And so somebody buying it would have a higher cap rate because the risk on this property is higher due to that potential,
No,
or
I
that pending
understand.
vacancy.
No, I just want to know about the way we use the cap rate. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all my question.
Thank you. Is there any questions to the applicant?
No questions.
No question.
Okay, so you indicate that this property right now has a significant vacancy. And is there any possibility that the property could be redeveloped so to accommodate a tenant?
And we thought about introducing evidence on land value here, because really this is the type of property that, like, when I say redeveloped, I mean knock down and build
Yeah.
a building.
Well, I meant the building as it stands, redeveloped so to accommodate tenants. I'm not talking about knocking the building down.
There really isn't. I mean, we've been marketing it for, you know, we were like, when we have somebody who has a sublisting, we're actively trying to find somebody to replace them. And we've been doing that for years now, and we just haven't figured out a way to use this space in a way that's economical.
Okay.
Realistically, you know, this is the type of place where in a year, we're gonna probably be showing what an apartment would look like there and costing that over, you know, this continuing to be retail.
Well, you right now have two other tenants, the leases, would that preclude you from
Yeah, so
demolishing at this point?
It is, like, that's the reason why I don't have a plan right now showing an apartment on it.
When do those leases expire?
So the Hakeem Optical, both of them expire in the next couple of years.
Actually, all
Yeah.
21.
But Hakeem, I'm not aware of what the options are on them. That would be the big factor, right?
They
Because
might have a right of renewal.
Sorry?
They might have a right of renewal.
Exactly. And then we
Then
would
you have to buy them out.
exactly, and factor
So
that in.
that became at your cost.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you don't really have anything to come up with 10% cap rate, that's just something you just pull from the air, but you think because of the property itself, your evidence is that an investor's gonna be demanding a high cap rate because of the situation there.
And nobody would trade a property like this. Like you wouldn't sell it because you're selling at the absolute lowest point, right? So unless you were really desperate, that's why they're, you know, showing a comparable cap rate, it just wouldn't exist. Because why would you wait till the worst possible moment, right? You're selling in the worst market.
Okay, you are aware, of course, that next period, if you have the biggest factor you have now, the city's gonna have to use those numbers, and you're gonna have a much lower assessment, because we're talking about post-reference situation.
So
That'll affect your next assessment.
So our vacancy, where you're factoring in the existing vacancy, it would change your cap rate analysis, right? Because the cap rate risk going forward.
That too, and also the income approach will also indicate a much lower value, because you're gonna have a higher ratio of vacancy.
Absolutely. And just like in 2 years, if it's still vacant,
No,
the
I
same
know.
investor would come up with that lower value.
We're talking about the future, though, not the past, though.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, okay. Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.